I have no memories whatever, thanks to the fact that nothing that I have left behind possesses the least significance. The past doesn't exist for me. Only what's current exists. I'm a prisoner of the instant, and I rush into this instant, an instant that has no continuation, just as it has no earlier version, and I have to tell myself, if I had the time to think about this between two instants, that I have no need for either past or future, because neither one exists. But in fact, I have no time between two instants, since there's no such thing as two instants. Hey everybody, thank you for watching Leaf by Leaf. Today we're talking about László Krasznahorkai's Chasing Homer. It is a short little novel put out by New Directions in this beautiful, thin, but gorgeous hardcover. This is actually a mixed media book. 3 Hungarians have collaborated to give us the text from Krasznahorkai, music by Sylvester Miklos, and art by Max Newman. When I first saw that there was an auditory, a musical element to this work, I got really excited because I thought that maybe someone had set a score to the entire work. And then I saw that there are these QR codes at the start of each of the chapters. You can scan those with your phone and then play the clip that goes with that chapter. So the first time I began listening to the clip and reading the chapter at the same time, only to find that the clip stopped playing. Well, first of all, it got in the way for me because, as I've talked about many times, I basically have to have silence when I read. And this really percussive and propulsive music that's put together by Miklos really caught my attention as a drummer too, so it was hard for me to focus on the text. And it didn't cover, the length of each clip is not as long as it takes me to read even a page or two, especially of Krasznahorkai's prose, which is mostly composed of these long, sprawling, labyrinthine, but very rhythmically cohesive sentences. So the second and then the third time that I read this, I just read the text. I didn't use the musical accompaniment. It's pretty cool. You can go on New Directions' website and go through and scroll and click and listen to each of the sound clips. And I think it's a great attempt at this mixed media and to make books more than just the text in front of you. But for me, as sort of someone who just really would rather be alone with the text, the musical accompaniment didn't work for me. I will say that what probably would work best is listening to the clip before each chapter and then reading the chapter, because this will sort of slow down the experience of the story as it's unfolding. At the same time, another part of me feels like the story works best when you just read it straight through, because Krasznahorkai does what he does best here in Chasing Homer. Just like in Herman and the Last Wolf, the sense of impending doom and anxiety and feeling hunted, that whole predator and prey model that Krasznahorkai does so well. Hence my clever little metaphor with my camouflage here. Krasznahorkai gets as deep as I've ever seen someone go into the mind of a person who is being hunted down and on the run. He captures that frantic anxiety and the fatal calculation ever present in the paranoid mind. In fact, in certain cases, as he is referring, presumably he is referring to the killers that are after him, and he keeps referring to them as they. At times, this narrator seems like a character who has leaped right out of the pages of Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow. Before we get too much into the character and the story, though, I want to say another thing about Krasznahorkai's sentences. You know, he's got books that are made up of one whole sentence. And I know he's not the first to do this, but the art of the long sentence is something at which to marvel, because it's extremely difficult to pull off, especially when it's in a stream of consciousness, such as Krasznahorkai's character here. Sure, one can defenestrate periods and just use the em dash and commas and semicolons and parentheses, but without being very careful about the wording and the flow of the thoughts, it can easily lose your audience or become cluttered and clunky. Somehow, Krasznahorkai is able to craft these cathedrals that keep us racing headlong without a single speed bump. And though not all of the episodes that make up this book are composed of just one sentence, many of them are. Krasznahorkai models this story on the simple mystery genre, replete with throwing us into the middle of some situation that even the first-person narrator doesn't completely understand. And then Krasznahorkai gives us little clues along the way to trigger our minds down one possible solution or another. He also, of course, does a great job of utilizing red herrings. The red herring of the possibility that the protagonist is just dreaming. Protagonist is insane. That the protagonist hasn't been going on for years and years and years like this, but maybe just a few moments. And of course, at the very end, there is an enormous false ending red herring that is pitch perfect. What we know pretty early on from this protagonist is that he has been judged and sentenced for some crime he doesn't understand. Now, what does that sound like? Yes, that is Kafka's K. So Krasznahorkai is utilizing different areas of literature. Kafka, of course, Homer we get right in the title and in many of the titles of the episodes. And then towards the end, there's an old tour guide who starts quoting from the Odyssey. And in a sense, even now in 2022 or 2017, or maybe it was 2016 when Krasznahorkai wrote this, here we are millennia later. And in a sense, we're still being chased by and chasing Homer. This narrator speaks directly to the reader, almost like a guide who is giving us tips on how to survive when you're living a life on the run with killers nipping at your heels. He says so many catchy things that really make you stop and consider how unique this mind is, such as, the decisions I make must be utterly wrong ones, always, without exception. And his reasoning, of course, is that he doesn't want to make any decisions that his pursuers would possibly conclude that he would make. He tells us that a place of shelter will be ruled by terror and miscalculation, whereas out here in the open, I keep reminding myself, even as I keep looking quickly over my shoulder, that that's out of the question out here, facing forward again. It's just a state of constant, ceaseless, ever-present vigilance. He says he doesn't eat. He says he doesn't drink. He says he doesn't dream. He says he doesn't sleep. And he gives legitimate reasons why. Yet, there's also the ironic or contradictory actions throughout the text where he does do all of those things. We get a moment after he's already sort of been expounding on this thought that there's only this one instant in the eternal present. There is no in-between two moments because there are no two moments. There's just one drawn-out superimposition of a moment. This leads him to one of his grandest diatribes about mathematics. He says, the most horrendous of all assertions made by mathematics, and he hates mathematics, is already present in the simplest addition, that 1 + 1 = 2. I can't possibly imagine anything more repulsive. Even the mere thought of this sort of addition fills me with nausea, because then I'd have to concede that all this is independent of anything. This is one of the seeds that we get that's setting us up for this perfect ending. The other seed is his seemingly random rant about mice and lab mice specifically. The first time you read it, it does seem extremely random until you reach the false ending. And on the third time that I read it, just focusing on the text, not really looking at the illustrations or listening to the musical accompaniment, that's when the moment, it's actually a double ending, a false ending, and then a soft ending, if I can coin that term. Krasznahorkai pulls us through the stream of consciousness of this Kafkaesque character, pages and pages and pages and pages of his mind, just ruminating and ruminating. And then suddenly we're thrown into a bar where an old tour guide has brought these two Japanese tourists, a husband and wife, pretty much against their will, and starts reading from the Odyssey to them, and starts reading it in this stentorian manner that has a bitter edge to it, an anger. And he's getting upset that they're just not seeing what he sees about that. And then Krasznahorkai points us to the possibility that the cave where Calypso kept Odysseus is mere miles away from where they are. Shifting from the mode of the fugitive to this sort of almost mythical and magical element to the text. And then finally, to the ending, is exemplary of crafting a story that satisfies, a story that is not anticlimactic, and a story that resonates. Another one of these delicious red herrings comes when the tour guide says to the Japanese couple, "Look here now, this is Homer. It's not me speaking, but Homer himself. Understand what I'm saying?" And it almost feels like it is not the Japanese couple that's being interrogated, but we, the readers. The false ending, the first of the two-punch knockout ending, is one of the best punchlines I think I've ever read. And it seems that what this text is telling us is that if this life, if our existence really is just a series of processes and reactions and consequences. At one point, the narrator says that life is just consequence, one consequence after another. If it's all just blind chance, then blind chance can sure be funny. László Krasznahorkai, knocking out of the park, reminding me of why I love to read.